What if the perfect Father's Day gift wasn't love, but truth? The kind that doesn't just hurt, it exposes everything. This story pulls you into a home where silence isn't weakness, it's strategy, where every uneasy glance, every missing dollar, and every crossed line is quietly collected, piece by piece. He thought control came from money. He believed intimidation could keep secrets buried. But what happens when the one person he underestimated stops reacting and starts watching? What unfolds isn't just betrayal, it's a calculated unraveling of power, trust, and identity. A child's discomfort becomes the turning point. Hidden transactions become evidence, and a single gift becomes the moment everything collapses in front of everyone who once believed him. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's about patience, truth, and the cost of crossing a line that should have never been touched. Father's Day used to mean burnt pancakes, forced smiles, and pretending everything inside this house was normal. This time, it became something else entirely: quiet, precise, and long overdue. Every moment leading up to that day had been carefully collected, like pieces of evidence no one knew were being gathered. The late-night whispers that stopped when footsteps got too close, the way a child's laughter slowly turned into hesitation, the subtle tightening around small shoulders whenever he walked into the room, carrying that same entitled confidence, like nothing in this house existed beyond his control. And then there was the money. Little things at first: cash missing from drawers, excuses that didn't quite land, sudden decisions made without discussion, masked as what's best for the family. But patterns don't lie. They stack up quietly until they start telling a story of their own. A story about someone who believed access meant ownership, of space, of trust, of boundaries that were never his to cross. Nothing was said, not yet. Because silence, when used right, sharpens everything. It forces observation. It builds patience. It lets the truth grow bold enough to expose itself without interference. That gift sat wrapped on the table like any other: clean edges, neat ribbon, nothing suspicious to the untrained eye. He barely looked at it at first, too busy enjoying the role he'd written for himself in this family: the provider, the authority, the man no one questioned. But everything inside that box had been chosen with intention. Every receipt, every copied statement, every recorded moment that captured more than just words. It captured tone, entitlement, the subtle shifts that revealed who he really was when he thought no one was paying attention. The room felt different when it was finally opened. Not loud, not explosive, just heavy. The kind of silence that presses against your chest when truth lands harder than any argument ever could. His face changed first. Not confusion, not denial, recognition. Because deep down, he knew exactly what had been done and why. And in that moment, the illusion he had built so comfortably inside this family didn't just crack, it collapsed. It started with small things most people would overlook: a pause before answering a simple question, a child choosing silence over excitement, a look that lingered just a second too long, like something didn't feel right but couldn't yet be explained out loud. Those moments don't scream for attention, but they echo if you listen closely. Nothing was ignored. Every shift in behavior became a signal. Every uneasy glance was stored away, replayed, studied. Trust doesn't break all at once. It erodes quietly, and by the time it's visible, the damage is already deep. What made it worse was how easily he moved through the house, like everything belonged to him, like no one would ever question the authority he had claimed without earning. And then the patterns started forming. The finances didn't add up. They hadn't for a while. Withdrawals with no explanation, decisions made behind closed doors, a growing sense that control wasn't just about money, it was about power, about making sure no one else had enough clarity to push back. To outsiders, it looked like responsibility, stability, a man managing his household. But inside, something darker was taking shape. The discomfort in that child wasn't random. It aligned too closely with his presence, his tone, his timing. It showed up in the way laughter stopped when he entered a room, in the way space was carefully maintained, like an invisible boundary had already been crossed too many times. That was the moment everything shifted. This was no longer about suspicion. It became strategy. Nothing reactive, nothing emotional, just careful, deliberate observation. Phone records copied, bank statements saved, conversations documented, not just words, but the way they were said, the pressure behind them, the subtle manipulations designed to confuse, to control, to silence. He thought it was weakness, that nothing being said meant nothing was understood, that no confrontation meant no consequences. But patience isn't passive, it's preparation. Every day that passed, the picture became clearer. Every lie added weight to what was already building, and what looked like helplessness from the outside was actually something far more dangerous. Control being taken back piece by piece, without him ever noticing. Because the truth doesn't need noise to grow, it just needs time. And by the time he realized what had been seen, recorded, and understood, it was already too late to undo any of it. Control, in his world, always came down to money. That's what he believed gave him the final word, the ability to decide, to override, to dismiss. Bills paid meant questions silenced, providing meant owning, and over time, that belief settled into everything: how he spoke, how he moved, how he looked at everyone else in the house like they were extensions of something he had purchased. It didn't happen overnight. It never does. At first, it sounded reasonable. Let me handle it. I know what I'm doing. Simple phrases that slowly replaced transparency with secrecy. Bank accounts shifted. Access became limited. Conversations about finances turned into one-sided declarations. And every time something felt off, it was brushed away with confidence so firm it almost felt foolish to question it. Almost. Because the numbers told a different story. Withdrawals that didn't match expenses, transfers that led nowhere familiar, cash disappearing in ways that couldn't be explained by groceries or bills or anything that actually supported the family he claimed to protect. And when those gaps were quietly followed, they led somewhere even worse. Choices made for himself, hidden behind the image of responsibility. That was the illusion. The man of the house wasn't managing anything, he was taking, not just money, but stability, not just resources, but trust, using intimidation as a shield, making sure no one looked too closely, no one asked too much. And when discomfort surfaced, it was met with just enough pressure to make silence feel easier than confrontation. But silence, again, was never surrender. Every transaction was noted, every inconsistency tracked. Statements copied, dates aligned, timelines built with a precision he never expected. Because while he relied on control through force, something far more dangerous was taking shape. Control through understanding. And understanding removes power. He thought no one could challenge him without proof, that as long as everything stayed behind closed doors, his version of reality would remain intact, that fear would keep everything exactly where he wanted it. What he didn't realize was how loud the truth becomes when it's finally given a voice. Because everything he took quietly, the money, the trust, the sense of safety, was never gone. It was being gathered. And when it came back, it didn't return as a question. It returned as undeniable proof. Father's Day arrived wrapped in normalcy, just the way he liked it. A table set, familiar faces gathered, the quiet expectation that respect would be handed to him without question. He sat there like he always did, comfortable, confident, certain that whatever control he had built inside these walls would carry him through another day unquestioned. The gift sat in front of him, clean and deliberate. No emotion attached to it, no warmth, just weight. He smiled at first, the kind of smile that came from habit, not curiosity. Fingers moved casually, peeling back paper, unaware that every second was leading straight into something he had spent months avoiding without even knowing it. Inside wasn't anything a father would expect. Not a watch, not a card, just truth. Neatly arranged, impossible to ignore. Printed bank statements marked with dates that didn't match his stories. Transactions that exposed where money had really gone. Copies of messages that revealed tone, pressure, manipulation. The version of him no one else had been allowed to see clearly. And beneath it all, the quietest, most devastating layer. Documented moments that aligned too perfectly with a child's growing silence. The room shifted before anyone even spoke. Confusion turned into tension. Eyes moved from paper to his face, waiting for him to explain what couldn't be explained away. He tried, of course. A laugh that came too quickly, a shrug that didn't land, words that tripped over themselves because they had nowhere solid to stand anymore. This wasn't an argument. There was nothing to argue with. Every excuse he had ever used was already accounted for, already dismantled before it could even leave his mouth. The authority he had relied on, the money, the intimidation, the control, had no place here. Not when everything was laid out in a way that didn't require belief, only recognition. And recognition came fast. The respect he thought he owned disappeared first, then the certainty, then the space he had once filled so easily. What replaced it wasn't anger, it was something colder, a realization settling into everyone at once that the man they thought they knew had been something else entirely. He looked around like someone waiting for support that wasn't coming, because there was none left to give. Everything he had taken quietly had found its way back into that room, louder than anything he could silence. And for the first time, control wasn't his anymore. It never would be again. If that ending left you thinking, just wait, because stories like this remind us that silence always has a breaking point. If you felt the tension, the truth, and that final moment of reckoning, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories where secrets don't stay hidden forever. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next story, because the next truth might hit even harder.